What if I told you that the most peaceful landscape on Earth, that endless white silence under a pale blue sky, is actually a silent, screaming battlefield, a place where the very air fights the ground, where life performs miracles just to cling on for a single day, and where the ground beneath your feet can be a frozen tomb preserving secrets tens of thousands of years old? This isn't just a pretty wallpaper, this is the tundra, and it holds the keys to our planet's past, and terrifyingly, its future. Forget everything you think you know about desolate, cold places, because by the end of this journey, you will see this frozen expanse not as empty, but as the most full, charged, and critical ecosystem on our planet. So, bundle up mentally, because we are diving deep into the reality behind the postcard. Let's start by defining our stage. When we say tundra, we are not just talking about any cold place. We are talking about a specific, brutal, and beautifully engineered biome that exists in a ring around the top of our world, circling the Arctic, and in smaller patches on the peaks of the world's tallest mountains. The word itself comes from the Finnish tunturia, meaning a treeless plain, and that's your first clue. This is a land beyond the timberline where trees surrender. The defining feature, the architect of this entire world, is something called permafrost. This isn't just hard ground in winter. Permafrost is soil rock or sediment that has been frozen solid for at least 2 consecutive years, and often for millennia, hundreds of thousands of years. Imagine the Earth as a layered cake. The top layer, called the active layer, used for a few fleeting weeks in the summer, maybe a foot or two down. This is where all the action happens, the tiny burst of life. But beneath that, a concrete-like, permanently frozen stratum that can extend down for over a mile. This permafrost is the tundra's foundation, its memory, and as we'll see, its potential Achilles heel. Now, on to the climate, which is less a weather pattern and more a constant grinding force. We're talking about long, terrifyingly cold winters where temperatures can plunge to minus 40, 50, even 60 degrees Celsius, where darkness can reign for months in the polar night, broken only by the ethereal dance of the aurora borealis. The sun literally disappears, and then the summer is not warm, it's merely less cold. A brief, frantic window of maybe 6 to 10 weeks where temperatures might nudge above freezing, averaging between 3 to 12 degrees Celsius. This is when the pale blue sky appears, the snow retreats, but never fully vanishes from the shadows, and the top layer of permafrost turns into a vast, soggy, bug-infested marsh. Precipitation is low, often less than in hot deserts, earning the tundra the nickname the polar desert. But because the permafrost prevents drainage, the melted water just sits on top, creating countless ponds, lakes, and squelching bogs. This is the stage, a flat, wine-scoured plain under an immense sky, underlain by a frozen vault, subjected to extremes that would shatter most materials and spirits. The wind is a constant sculptor, howling unimpeded by any forest, carving the snow into hard, rippled formations called sastrugi, and making the cold feel infinitely colder through a wind chill that can flash freeze exposed skin in minutes. It's a place of profound silence, but that silence is an illusion of our human ears. It's filled with the groan of shifting ice, the crack of freezing earth, the whisper of a billion snow crystals. This environment demands specialization. Life here isn't about competition in the traditional sense. It's about unanimous collaboration against the absolute enemy, the cold. The flora and fauna that call this place home aren't just living here. They are masterpieces of evolutionary adaptation, performing a high-wire act of survival on a geological timescale. Every plant is a dwarf, hugging the ground to escape. The desiccating wind, growing in slow motion over centuries. Every animal is either a migratory superstar arriving with the sun, or a permanent resident wrapped in a masterpiece of insulation. This is not a barren wasteland. It is a tightly wound, efficient, and breathtakingly resilient system that operates on a rhythm entirely alien to our temperate world. It's a lesson in minimalism, where every calorie of energy, every gram of nutrient is hoarded, recycled, and fought over. The pale blue sky is not a symbol of serenity, but a vast, cold lid on a pressure cooker of survival. And we have only just begun to scrape the surface of what that survival entails, and how every single element, from the tiniest moth to the largest bear, is interconnected in a web so delicate that a slight nudge can send shockwaves through the entire system. This is the baseline, the harsh, beautiful, and unforgiving reality of the tundra's physical realm. But to truly understand its heartbeat, we must look closer, down at the ground, at the incredible burst of life that defies all odds during those precious few weeks of sun. Zoom in with me now, down from that vast pale blue sky to the surface of the active layer during its brief summer thaw. This is when the tundra transforms from a frozen monochrome into a staggering, almost surreal tapestry of color and life, a phenomenon so intense it's been called the Great Awakening. But don't picture lush forests or tall grasses. Think in miniature. The kings of the tundra are not trees, but lichens, mosses, sedges, and dwarf shrubs. These are the ultimate survivalists. The vegetation grows low to the ground, forming a dense, insulating mat known as a cushion plant growth form. This shape traps a thin layer of warmer air, deflects the wind, and minimizes water loss. Take the Arctic willow, for instance. In our world, willows are trees. Here, it is a woody shrub that crawls along the ground, its stems never rising more than a few inches high. Its leaves tiny and often covered in fine hairs to create a greenhouse effect. Then there are the flowers. They perform a miracle of speed. Plants like the Arctic poppy, mountain avens, and saxifrages have their flower buds pre-formed, waiting under the snowpack for months. The moment enough light and warmth hit, they erupt in a blaze of yellow, white, and purple, completing their entire reproductive cycle, flowering, pollination, seed setting in a matter of weeks. They are solar panels perfectly designed to track the sun in a 24-hour arc across the sky, absorbing every photon of the midnight sun. But the real powerhouses are the non-vascular plants, the mosses and lichens. Reindeer moss, a lichen, is not a plant at all, but a symbiotic partnership between fungus and algae. It grows agonizingly slowly, perhaps a millimeter per year, and can be hundreds of years old. It requires no soil, can dry out completely and spring back to life with water, and forms the primary winter food for caribou. This floral carpet is the engine of the tundra food web. It converts the sun's energy into biological matter, and everything else depends on it. And with the plants come the invertebrates. The summer thaw unleashes a biblical plague of mosquitoes, black flies, and botflies. For us, a nightmare. For the tundra, a critical protein source. These insects hatch in their billions from the standing water, forming dense clouds. They are a nuisance to large mammals, but they are an absolute feast for the birds. And oh, the birds. The tundra in summer is a birdwatcher's paradise, but not of residents of committed migrants. Millions of shorebirds, waterfowl, and songbirds undertake epic journeys from every continent on Earth to breed here. Why make a trip of thousands of miles? Because of the bugs. The brief, intense explosion of insects provides a limitless protein-rich food supply to raise chicks rapidly. The 24-hour daylight allows for non-stop feeding, and the relative lack of ground predators compared to forests offers a safer nursery. Birds like the Arctic tern, which sees more daylight than any creature on Earth due to its pole-to-pole migration. The snow bunting, the majestic gerfalcon, and vast flocks of geese all turn the silent plain into a cacophony of calls. But they are on a deadline of terrifying strictness. A chick hatched too late will not be strong enough to make the migration south. It's a race against the freezing clock. On the ground, the small mammalian residents are in their element. The lemming, a small rodent, is legendary in tundra ecology. Its population cycles boom and bust every 3 to 4 years are the pulse that drives the entire predator population. In boom years, lemmings are everywhere, and their predators thrive. The snowy owl, the Arctic fox, the stoat, which turns white in winter as the ermine, all raise large litters. When the lemming population crashes, these predators must switch to other prey, move vast distances, or starve. The Arctic fox, with its incredibly dense fur and furry footpads, is a year-round genius, scavenging from polar bears, caching eggs, and following the tracks of larger animals. And then we have the giants. The musk ox, a shaggy relic of the Ice Age, forms defensive circles against wolves, its kivia underwool being one of the warmest natural fibers on Earth. The caribou, or reindeer, undertake the longest terrestrial migrations on the planet, moving in herds of tens of thousands to find lichens and to calve on specific grounds where winds keep the mosquitoes at bay. This summer explosion is a lesson in ecological efficiency and interconnection. Every element is linked. The sun feeds the plants feed the insects and rodents, which feed the birds and foxes, which feed the larger predators. It's a system honed by millennia of extreme pressure. But this delicate, frenetic ballet is entirely dependent on one thing: the stability of the stage itself, the permafrost foundation, and the reliability of the seasons. And that is where our story takes a dark, urgent turn, because that stability is now vanishing before our eyes. We must now confront the central, chilling paradox of the tundra. This landscape that appears so timeless, so immutable, is in fact one of the most fragile and rapidly changing environments on Earth. And the agent of this change is the very thing that defines it, the permafrost. For thousands of years, the permafrost has acted as a giant, global deep freezer. It hasn't just been freezing water. It's been freezing and preserving organic matter, the remains of plants, animals, and microbes from ancient grasslands and forests that thrived in different climates. This matter, locked away in the ice, has not decomposed. It contains vast amounts of carbon, essentially removed from the planet's active carbon cycle. Scientists estimate the permafrost holds nearly twice as much carbon as is currently in our entire atmosphere. It is a sleeping giant, and it is starting to wake up. As global temperatures rise due to human-caused climate change, the Arctic is warming at a rate more than twice the global average, a phenomenon known as Arctic amplification. The pale blue sky is now a lid on a warming box. This warming is causing the active layer that thin, seasonally thawed topsoil to become deeper. It's thawing the permafrost from the top down. When this happens, the ancient organic matter within it is finally exposed to microbes. These microbes, after a millennia-long pause, spring back to life and begin to do what they do best: decompose. This decomposition process has two primary outputs. One is carbon dioxide, the familiar greenhouse gas. The other, in the waterlogged, oxygen-poor conditions of the tundra bogs, is methane, and methane is a greenhouse gas over 25 times more potent than CO2 over a 100-year period in its heat-trapping ability. So, here's the feedback loop, the true horror of the tundra's thaw. Human activity warms the climate. The Arctic warms faster. Permafrost thaws. Microbes release CO2 and methane. These gases intensify the greenhouse effect. The climate warms. Furthermore, permafrost thaws. It's a self-reinforcing, accelerating cycle that, once significantly underway, is incredibly difficult to stop. We are essentially unlocking a carbon vault we cannot reseal. But the physical changes are visible right now. The land itself is collapsing. As the ice wedges within the permafrost melt, the ground loses its structural integrity. This leads to dramatic phenomena, thermokarst. This is where the land subsides, forming gullies, sinkholes, and chaotic landscapes of slumping soil and newborn lakes. In Siberia, these are called drunken forests, where trees tilt at crazy angles as the ground gives way. Entire coastlines in the Arctic are eroding at staggering rates, meters per year, as the frozen cliffs melt and slump into the sea. Infrastructure is failing, roads buckle, buildings tilt, pipelines rupture. For the life we just described, the consequences are dire. The changing snow patterns affect the insulating blanket for rodents and plants. Warmer winters with more rain-on-snow events can create ice layers that lock away the lichens, leading to mass starvation of caribou herds. The delicate timing of the Great Awakening is being disrupted. Insects are emerging earlier, but migrant birds, operating in ancient photoperiod cues, may arrive out of sync with their food peak. New species are moving northward. Shrubs are starting to grow taller, a process called shrubification, which begins to change the albedo, reflectiveness of the land, absorbing more heat and accelerating warming. Predators from the south, like red foxes, are encroaching on Arctic fox territory, bringing new competition and diseases. The pale, blue sky is now a witness to a landscape in violent, fundamental transition. This isn't a future prediction. Satellite imagery and ground measurements from the last 30 years show these changes accelerating. The tundra is becoming a net source of carbon to the atmosphere, flipping from a long-term sink to a spigot. The frozen vault is not just leaking. Its doors are being blown open. And what's inside that vault holds more than just carbon. It holds ghosts. When we speak of the permafrost as a frozen tomb, we must take that term literally. It is perhaps the world's most effective natural preservative. For millennia, it has been silently curating a museum of the past, and as it thaws, it is yielding up finds that are as breathtaking as they are terrifying. Let's start with the awe-inspiring. The tundra has given us some of the most spectacular and complete paleontological discoveries on the planet. The most famous are the woolly mammoths, creatures that walked these very plains during the last ice age. Their bodies, complete with skin, hair, muscles, and even stomach contents, have been found in near-perfect condition. In 2010, a juvenile woolly mammoth named Yuka was discovered in Siberia with its brain still largely intact, a scientific marvel. Similarly, woolly rhinoceroses, extinct cave lions, and even a whole Pleistocene-era wolf pup have emerged from the melting ice, frozen in time. These finds are revolutionizing our understanding of prehistoric life, from their genetics and diet to their appearance and cause of death. They are time capsules, offering a direct window into a lost world of megafauna that roamed these same snowfields when they were a colder, drier grassland known as the Mammoth Steppe. But the permafrost's archive isn't limited to animals. Ancient plant seeds, some over 30,000 years old, have been successfully germinated by scientists. Viking artifacts, perfectly preserved tools, and even ancient human settlements are being revealed as the ground melts back. This is a boon for archaeology and paleontology, a chance to recover data we never dreamed possible. However, the thaw also reveals a darker, more disturbing collection. The permafrost is releasing relics of more recent, grim history. From the Siberian tundra, the remains of mammoth tusks are hunted by ivory traders, but so too are emerging the bones of Stalin's Gulag prisoners, buried in mass graves in the remote north, now being exposed by erosion. But the most insidious releases are microscopic. The permafrost is a deep freeze for ancient bacteria and viruses, pathogens that haven't circulated in the environment for thousands, even millions of years, and to which modern humans, animals, and plants had no immunity, are being unlocked. We are playing a game of biological Russian roulette. In 2016, an anthrax outbreak in Siberia's Yamal Peninsula was directly linked to the thawing of a reindeer carcass that had been frozen for over 75 years. The bacteria were released, got into the soil and water, and infected modern reindeer herds and the local indigenous herders. killing a child and hospitalizing dozens. Scientists have since revived other zombie viruses from permafrost samples, giant viruses that are still infectious to amoebas after 30,000 years. While these particular ones don't infect humans, the precedent is set. The smallpox virus, which ravaged humanity for centuries, could theoretically be preserved in the frozen graves of its victims. These are not the plot of a science fiction movie. They are the documented, peer-reviewed risks of a warming Arctic. Furthermore, the thaw is releasing legacy pollution. During the Cold War, the Arctic was seen as a remote dumping ground. Old military bases, dew-line stations, and industrial projects left behind a cocktail of heavy metals, radioactive waste, and persistent organic pollutants like PCBs. Frozen in place, they're now being mobilized by meltwater, entering rivers, the food web, and ultimately the tissues of the animals and people who rely on them. For the indigenous communities of the tundra, the Inuit, Sami Nenets, and others, this is a triple threat. Their physical world is literally melting and collapsing beneath their homes and hunting grounds. Their food security is threatened as animal migrations and health become unpredictable. And their cultural heritage, tied inextricably to the ice and snow, is being erased. The pale blue sky now looks down on a landscape that is not only changing ecologically, but is becoming an active agent in global biochemical and epidemiological processes. The tundra is no longer a remote, passive wilderness. It has become a central player in the planetary system, broadcasting signals from the past that have direct, potent consequences for our global future. We have treated it as the edge of the world, but we are discovering too late that it is actually the beating heart of the Earth's climate system. And its distress signals are written in the collapsing land, the shifting species, and the ghosts it releases from the ice. So where does this leave us? We are standing at a precipice, looking out over the endless snowfields under a pale blue sky that is now a symbol not of peace, but of profound change and urgency. The tundra is teaching us a brutal lesson in interconnection. Its fate is inextricably linked to ours and ours to it. The carbon it releases fuels the climate change that disrupts weather patterns, raises sea levels, and intensifies storms across the globe in your country, in your city. The pathogens it releases know no borders. We cannot wall ourselves off from the consequences of a thawing Arctic. It is a global thermostat, and we have turned up the heat, but within this crisis lies a seed of profound opportunity and a clear path forward. The first step is knowledge and witness. Simply by watching this video, by understanding that the tundra is more than a pretty background, you have become a witness. Your awareness is the first and most critical tool. Scientists on the ground, from a multitude of nations and disciplines, are monitoring these changes with incredible dedication, braving the harsh conditions to gather the data we desperately need. Supporting their work, whether through awareness, discussion, or directly funding scientific research, is a direct action you can take. Secondly, we must listen to and center indigenous knowledge. The peoples of the Arctic have been meticulous observers and stewards of this environment for millennia. Their traditional ecological knowledge, tech, is a vast, living library of understanding about animal behavior, weather patterns, and ecosystem health that is now proving invaluable to Western science. Supporting indigenous land rights and sovereignty is not just an act of justice, it is a critical climate strategy. They are the frontline defenders of this biome. Third, and most broadly, we must connect the dots in our own lives. The primary driver of the Arctic's rapid warming is the burning of fossil fuels elsewhere. Every action that reduces our personal and societal carbon footprint sends a ripple effect toward the poles. This means advocating for and transitioning to renewable energy, supporting sustainable policies and politicians, reevaluating our consumption, and reducing waste. It means understanding that the choices we make about transportation, diet, and energy at home have a direct line to the stability of the permafrost. But individual action, while vital, is not enough. We need systemic large-scale change. This means holding corporations and governments accountable for their emissions and their environmental impact. It means demanding international cooperation on climate treaties with real teeth. The Paris Agreement was a start, but its goals are insufficient to prevent catastrophic thaw. We need to set more ambitious targets and, crucially, meet them. We must invest in green technology, in carbon capture research, and in adaptation strategies for vulnerable communities worldwide, including those in the Arctic. The tundra also presents unique possibilities for conservation and mitigation. Projects are exploring the potential of rewilding with species like bison to help restore the mammoth steppe grassland ecosystem, which can stabilize permafrost better than shrubland. Other scientists are investigating the use of reflective geoengineering techniques at a local scale to cool the ground. While these are not silver bullets, they are part of a necessary toolbox of solutions. Finally, we must reframe our relationship with this place. We must move from seeing it as a remote, disposable frontier for resource extraction, oil, gas, minerals, to recognizing it as a global commons, a vital organ in our planet's life support system. Its health is our health. Its stability is our stability. The pale blue sky and endless snowfields are not a distant postcard. They are the mirror reflecting our collective future. If they darken with the smoke of wildfires now increasingly common in the Arctic, or if they vanish under a green wave of encroaching forest, we will have lost more than a beautiful view. We will have lost a key regulator of our climate and unleashed forces we may not be able to control. So here is my call to you, my viewer. Don't let this knowledge end with this video. Let it be the beginning. First, make your voice heard. Share this video. Talk about the tundra, the permafrost, the feedback loops. Break the illusion that it's a faraway problem. Share it with one person who needs to hear this today. Second, dive deeper. The links are in the description below. I have compiled a list of peer-reviewed scientific journals, documentaries, and organizations dedicated to Arctic research and indigenous advocacy. Follow them. Educate yourself with credible sources. Third, take tangible action. Choose one thing you can do this week. It could be contacting your local representative to demand stronger climate policies, switching to a renewable energy provider if possible, reducing your food waste, or donating to a trusted organization that funds Arctic science or indigenous rights. Every single action compounds. And finally, remember the view. Remember that pale blue sky and those endless snowfields. Let the image be a reminder not of emptiness, but of immense, interconnected life and fragility. Let it be your motivation. We are the first generation to see these changes so clearly, and we may be the last with a real chance to mitigate their worst effects. The tundra is silent no more. It is screaming through its thawing ground, its shifting life, its melting ice. It is our turn to listen, to amplify that scream into a global call for action and to act. The future, that frozen expanse, and in no small part our own, is being written right now. Let's ensure it's a story of resilience, wisdom, and decisive change, not one of loss and irreversible tipping points. The time is now. What will you do?